Laura Jennings was a beloved teacher with a spotless reputation. Angela Lane was a woman with a dark past no one knew about. When Laura's lifeless body was found in a quiet Vermont town, the shocking truth behind her death unraveled a web of secrets, lies, and a mystery that spanned decades. One you won't believe is real. Wilmington, Vermont, was the kind of place people dreamed about retiring to. A town that seemed untouched by time. The streets were lined with Victorian homes, the coffee shop knew everyone's order by heart, and the local paper mostly reported on bake sales and high school sports scores. Nestled deep in the Green Mountains, it was a safe haven from the chaos of the world. Nothing bad ever happened there. That's why what took place in the winter of 2016 sent shockwaves through the entire town. It began on a Monday morning, just after a heavy snowstorm had blanketed the town in silence. When Laura Jennings didn't show up for work at Wilmington High School, her absence was met with concern rather than alarm. She was the kind of teacher students actually liked. Known for her warm smile, her obsession with classic literature, and her strange but endearing habit of quoting Shakespeare. In casual conversation, she never missed a day. When calls to her phone went unanswered and she didn't respond to messages, a fellow teacher drove to her house just to check in. The house sat at the edge of town, tucked away near the woods, with a long gravel driveway that hadn't yet been cleared of snow. Her car was still parked outside, half covered in frost. The front door was locked, and there was no answer when the teacher knocked. That's when police were called. Officers arrived less than an hour later and forced their way in. Nothing could have prepared them for what they found. Laura's body was discovered in the bathtub. The water was cold and stained a deep red. She was fully clothed, eyes open, and there was no sign of a struggle anywhere in the house. The only thing out of place was the silence. Too still, too quiet. It didn't feel like a robbery. There were no broken windows, no ransacked drawers. Her jewelry was untouched on the vanity. Her phone lay face down on the bathroom floor, its battery long dead. The news spread fast. By noon, Wilmington was buzzing with fear. The local diner turned into an unofficial headquarters for gossip and speculation. Parents picked up their kids early from school. People double-checked their locks. How could someone like Laura, so kind, so trusted, be murdered in such a brutal, deliberate way? Detectives began interviewing neighbors, friends, and co-workers. Nobody could think of a single person who would want to hurt her. She lived alone, had no criminal record, no history of conflict. Her social media was filled with photos of books, baked goods, and her golden retriever, Daisy. There were no threats, no red flags, but detectives knew that someone had been inside that house. Someone had stood just feet from Laura, waited for the right moment, and then killed her with such precision that there wasn't a single piece of physical evidence left behind. It was as if the killer had vanished into thin air. In a town where nothing bad ever happened, Laura Jennings's murder was not only shocking, it was impossible to believe. As investigators began to search for answers in Laura Jennings's murder, they combed through her home looking for anything that could provide a lead. Her house was orderly, with neatly stacked books on every shelf and handwritten lesson plans tucked into folders on her desk. There were no signs of a struggle, no sign that anything had been taken. It was almost too perfect That kind of control pointed to someone who had either done this before or someone who had planned every moment. The breakthrough came in the attic. While examining the crawl space, a detective found a cardboard box pushed behind an old trunk. Inside were neatly folded newspaper clippings, worn photographs, and a bundle of letters tied with a red ribbon. The box looked like it had been untouched for years. Most of the papers were yellowed with age. What caught their attention immediately was that every article was about a missing woman. The dates ranged from 1997 to 2002. The stories were from towns in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and upstate New York, nowhere near Vermont. But what made it stranger was that all the women had something in common. They worked in education. One clipping described a missing substitute teacher from a small town in Ohio. Another was about a college librarian who vanished one night after work. A third told the story of a graduate student who never came home from a study session. They weren't connected by any police department, and none of the cases had ever been solved. Most had been forgotten. As detectives looked closer, they began to notice a pattern. Every town mentioned was one that Laura had lived in at some point in the past. Her resume didn't show it, but further digging revealed addresses and rental agreements under a different name. She had once gone by Angela Lane. That discovery sent chills through the team. Angela Lane was the name of a woman who had disappeared from her college town in 1999 following the suspicious death of her roommate. Back then, police had suspected Angela in the case, but with no evidence and no body, the case had gone cold. And Angela Lane had vanished. Now, here she was, hidden, in plain sight, living under a new name in Vermont, working as a respected teacher. The shift from Angela to Laura wasn't just a name change. She had completely rebuilt her life. New state, new job, new identity. But that begged a dangerous question. Had she changed her name to escape someone? Or to escape justice? Investigators couldn't be sure yet. What they knew for certain was that Laura had a secret past, and that past might have finally caught up with her. Perhaps her murder wasn't random at all. Perhaps someone had been watching her for years, waiting for the right time to strike. The letters in the box were signed only with initials. A.L. That detail, subtle but chilling, confirmed that Laura had never truly left Angela behind. And now, it seemed, neither had someone else. The discovery that Laura Jennings had once been Angela Lane sent shockwaves through the investigation. Suddenly, the quiet murder in a peaceful Vermont town connected to a dark and tangled past that stretched back nearly 2 decades. Angela Lane was no stranger to suspicion. Back in 1999, her college roommate Rachel Burns had mysteriously disappeared. At the time, Rachel's case had rocked the small Ohio college community. The police had questioned Angela extensively, as she was the last person known to have seen Rachel alive. But without a body or any concrete evidence, Angela had never been charged. Then, unexpectedly, Angela herself vanished. No one heard from her again until she re-emerged years later as Laura Jennings, living hundreds of miles away under a different name. The connection to Rachel's disappearance shifted the entire focus of the investigation. What had really happened between the 2 young women? Was Laura's murder somehow related to that cold case? Police began piecing together timelines, interviewing old acquaintances from Angela's past, and digging into any records that might shed light on what she had been hiding. What emerged was a picture of a woman struggling with a heavy burden. Angela had never publicly admitted what happened that night. The official story was an argument between roommates that spiraled out of control, but no one knew the details. The old neighbors and classmates described Angela as quiet but intense, prone to mood swings, and sometimes fearful. She had been protective of Rachel, but also jealous of her social life and success. Then there was the discovery that Laura had been taking medication, antidepressants, and anxiety treatments that she never mentioned at work. Combined with her sudden disappearance years ago, it suggested a woman battling inner demons and trauma. But what truly unsettled investigators was the fact that Laura's death bore signs of planning. Toxicology reports revealed she had been drugged before being drowned in the bathtub. This wasn't a crime of passion or a random act of violence. Someone wanted her dead in a very deliberate way. Whoever the killer was, they knew Laura, or Angela, very well. Yet the deeper they dug, the more confusing things became. None of the people Angela had known in Ohio or Pennsylvania seemed to hold a grudge, and none admitted to fearing her. She wasn't known for making enemies. So who could have wanted her dead? And why now, after all these years? Then came a chilling realization. If Angela had indeed been responsible for Rachel's disappearance, then Laura's murder could be seen as revenge. But if she was innocent, then the killer was punishing a woman haunted by a secret she never confessed. The detectives were left with a haunting question. Was Laura Jennings a victim of a past she couldn't escape? Or was she more involved in the dark history than anyone had suspected? Every new piece of evidence only deepened the mystery. The seemingly perfect teacher was anything but ordinary. Her past life as Angela Lane was a shadow that stretched long and dark, one that now seemed to have finally caught up with her in the most shocking way imaginable. The investigation took a sharp turn when a retired detective from Ohio reached out to Vermont authorities with a lead that no one had expected. He had been reviewing cold cases and noticed similarities in the pattern of disappearances linked to Angela Lane's past. There was one name that appeared again and again in every town where a young woman connected to Angela had vanished. Ethan Wolfe. Ethan Wolfe was a drifter, a handyman who traveled between small towns offering odd jobs at schools, libraries, and private homes. He had no fixed address, and his employment history was scattered and hard to trace. What was unsettling was that he had been working briefly at Wilmington High School just months before Laura Jennings's death. That was the first concrete link between the present murder and the past disappearances. Police began to dig deeper into Wolfe's background. His history was patchy and filled with strange gaps. No one seemed to know much about his life before the last 10 years, and no records explained why he moved so often. Despite his quiet demeanor, rumors circulated in every town where he stayed. Whispers of inappropriate behavior, odd habits, and unexplained absences. The most disturbing discovery came when investigators found a trailer park in rural Maine where Wolfe had recently been living. It was a cluttered, cramped place filled with broken furniture and rusty tools. Behind a loose panel under his bed, officers uncovered a hidden compartment containing chilling trophies. personal items belonging to several missing women from the last 2 decades. There were lockets engraved with names, ID cards, and even handwritten notes from some of the victims. Among these was a photograph of Angela Lane, taken without her knowledge. Wolf's capture sent shockwaves through the community. His calm confession was disturbing in its coldness. He admitted to following Laura, Angela, for years, convinced she was responsible for the disappearance of his own sister. He believed Angela had killed Rachel Burns and had been waiting for the right moment to exact his own form of justice. The details of Wolf's obsession were terrifying. He had tracked Angela's moves, learned her routines, and studied her relationships. His visits to the towns where she lived weren't coincidental. They were carefully planned missions, driven by his belief that he was exposing a killer. Into his mind, Laura Jennings wasn't a new identity, but a mask hiding a dangerous truth. Despite his admissions, Wolf denied involvement in the earlier disappearances. His motive for killing Laura was revenge, not murder as part of a serial pattern. But the evidence painted a more complex picture. Wolf's presence at every town where a woman connected to Angela had vanished suggested he had played a role in the horror, even if it wasn't direct violence. Law enforcement now faced a terrifying reality. Wolf was a man who had hidden in the shadows for years, taking justice into his own hands while terrorizing communities. His ability to evade capture while leaving a trail of fear was a grim reminder of how easily evil could hide in plain sight. Wolf's arrest brought relief, but also raised many questions about what had truly happened over the years. His obsession had ended one life, but the mystery of the missing women and the secrets Angela had carried remained tangled in darkness. The truth was far from simple, and the town of Wilmington would never forget how close danger had been to their quiet streets. Even after Ethan Wolf's arrest, the investigation was far from over. While the town of Wilmington breathed a cautious sigh of relief, something still didn't sit right with the detectives. Wolf's confession explained his motive for killing Laura Jennings, but it left many unanswered questions, especially about the true circumstances surrounding Rachel Burns's disappearance and Angela Lane's mysterious past. As officers sifted through Laura's belongings, her sister discovered a small, unassuming flash drive hidden inside a hollowed-out book on Laura's shelf. The discovery was unexpected, but what was stored on it was far more shocking. The flash drive contained dozens of journal entries, some written under the name Angela Lane, others as Laura Jennings. These entries chronicled years of guilt, fear, and secrets that Laura had never shared with anyone. The journals revealed that Rachel Burns had not been murdered in cold blood. According to Laura's own words, it had been a tragic accident. During a heated argument between the two roommates, Rachel had slipped and fallen down a flight of stairs. Angela panicked, unsure of what to do next. The fear of being blamed, of losing everything, had overwhelmed her. Instead of calling for help, she hid the truth and fled, changing her identity to escape the crushing weight of guilt. Reading the journals, detectives saw a woman tormented by what had happened, but desperate to move on. Laura had built a new life, teaching and helping others, all while carrying this unbearable secret. Her murder was not the end of a criminal story. It was the tragic finale of someone haunted by the past. The journals also painted a clearer picture of Ethan Wolf's twisted vendetta. His sister's disappearance had been linked to Rachel Burns, but Wolfe had never uncovered the truth behind her death. His hunt for Angela, later Laura, was fueled by years of anger and misinformation. Wolfe believed he was delivering justice, but in reality, he was destroying a woman already broken by guilt. The town of Wilmington was left grappling with the complex layers of this story. Laura Jennings had not been a cold-blooded killer, nor had she been entirely innocent. She was a woman caught between the consequences of an accident and a lifetime of running from it. Ethan Wolfe's obsession had led to a senseless murder, but it also forced a long-buried truth to surface. In the end, the case was a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving. A peaceful town hid dark secrets. A beloved teacher carried a hidden past, and justice was not always clear-cut. The most shocking murder wasn't just about a crime, it was about how the shadows of the past can reach into the present, changing lives forever. The story of Laura Jennings, Angela Lane, and Ethan Wolfe became a cautionary tale, one that left the community forever changed. It was a chilling reminder that beneath the calm surface of small-town life, the most unbelievable truths can lurk, waiting to be uncovered.